My name is Farrell D. Moore, and welcome to another episode of Right. And today we're going to be interviewing author Tom Frye, in the first of the third of an eight-part series, rather. And today we're going to discuss his three-part series book, StagHeart. You ready for this, Tom?
Yep, I'm ready to go.
All right. What first inspired you to write this series?
I wanted to write a book with a good kid for once.
Really?
Yeah, my other books have all been about troubled, challenging, defiant kids, and Scratching on the Eight Ball was just filled with that. And readers used to tell me they would sometimes just like to hug that kid or slap the snot out of him. And so I wanted to write a book about a kid that got along with his dad, that was obedient and had a good standards and common sense. And so I invented this Ryan McNeil character, and he had a conflict, but he and that plays a part of the book. But yeah, I wanted to write about a good kid for once, and I think I accomplished that.
Did that challenge you? It's a
Yeah,
diversion from your normal troubled youth.
yeah, because I didn't want it to be too goody two shoes, and I didn't want it to be too boring.
Right.
But there's plenty of excitement happened in that book, and I found the challenges the kid has to overcome are phenomenal.
That's what's difficult when you have troubled youth. You write about you constantly have challenges, constant things that come up and to deal with. But when you write about good kids, that's a little bit harder, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I just wanted my audience to finally find a kid they could relate to that wasn't wired wrong.
Right. There wasn't a troubled youth, right?
Yeah, because I think the kids, and I was burned out at that time. I had been working with kids for almost 20 years by then, and I was getting burned out on these
wow.
Yeah, these dysfunction junction I came to constantly.
Yep. I can imagine that. I mean, that'd be really a certain period. If you have to work with troubled youth and write about troubled youth all the time, you do kind of endure burnout, don't you?
Oh yeah, you need some kind of thing to renew you, and I was finding that it was getting so depressing because my success rate was not very high, and I was blaming myself all the time when I had no idea that there's so many dead-end kids and so many kamikaze kids out there who are just hell-bent on self-destruction.
You may not want to answer this, but how many did you deal with in your lifetime of service?
How many kids?
Yeah. I'm just curious. I mean, innumerable or a handful or?
Well, hundreds of kids personally.
Oh my God.
And 15,000 in my one program that went through my drug program in 7 years.
15,000?
15,000, and they were all pretty good kids. They came from nice homes, and their parents paid a lot to have them go to this YMCA summer camp. But hundreds of kids that I personally worked with challenging at-risk behavior.
Wow, that's a lot of kids.
Yeah, it is, and it changed me, it impacted me, and I probably put more effort into trying to save them, and some kids you just can't save.
That must have been heartbreaking, Tom.
Oh yeah, and I've seen a lot of death. I've seen a lot of ODs. I personally did a lot of crisis intervention and was involved in that several times. Took a gun away from a kid one night down at Havelock Park. His mom had called me and said he has a gun and he wants to shoot himself. And it was a snowstorm that night, and I happened to go by the park, and there he was in the middle of the park. And I walked up to him, and he said, "My mom called you, didn't she?" I go, "Yes, she did. How are we going to solve this?" And he says, "Don't try to take my gun away." I said, "I won't. I'm not going to touch your gun."
No, is that a
And
rifle or a handgun?
it was a pistol
Oh,
and 9 millimeter. And in the course of our talking, he put it on the table between us as though he was tempting me to reach for it and grab it. And I didn't. I continued to talk to him. And 20 minutes later, I said, "You know, my feet are getting frozen here." I said, "Let's go somewhere where it's warm." And he scooted the gun across the table at me and said, "Unload it." And so I did. And I took him home, and he went on to his room, and his mom and I talked for another hour or so. And there was a stone lion head sitting against the wall. And I says, "What is that?" She goes, "That's something he made at the cement company when he worked there. Would you like it?" And I go, "Well, yeah, I'll make a fountain out of it." I took it home, and I drilled a hole through its mouth, and I made a nice fountain. She come through my alley, and she saw it one night, and she goes, "I want that back." And I said, "No, it's too cool." But on her birthday, she got it back.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah.
Now, what did you set out to write a three-part series, or did that evolve over time?
A lot happened in that book. There was a lot of history in StagHeart. It's woodlands in North Dakota that some mysterious things have happened. Natives and white people all came together as one, and there were there's a killer bear, and there's a black stag, and there's legends, all kinds of legends that they evolved from these woodlands. And so there was a deeper story there. It wasn't just a simple story. It was, convoluted plot and twisted legends that came out of I don't know where they came from.
Well, that's what I imagined. I mean, you started out to write one book about a good kid, right?
Yep.
It just gradually evolved into something much bigger.
Yeah. When I was a little kid, I used to sit at my grandpa's house on his back porch and listen to him tell stories. And he was Lakota, and his mother was Lakota. And there was a boy who got burned in a fire one night down in Beatrice, small town, Nebraska. And the doctors were going to amputate his legs. And my great grandmother, Rebecca Bauer, used her Indian medicine on him and healed him. And he grew up to be the fire marshal of Beatrice.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's kind of odd.
Yeah. So
That's an odd story, when you think
well,
they
my
were
grandpa
thinking of
told me
us
all kinds of
amputating his
stories.
legs. And
What's
she
that?
healed him? They were thinking of amputating his legs, and she healed him.
Oh yeah, yep. He was 10 years
Oh,
old, and he got caught in a house fire and was burned so bad that they were going to amputate his legs. And Rebecca Bauer, she used her Indian medicine on him and healed him. And that's my grandpa's big story about his mother. And
oh my God, that's a great story, Tom.
oh yeah, I love it. I never got to meet her. My uncle said I would have loved her because she'd opened her windows and her doors and threw birdseed all over her kitchen and living room floor so the birds and squirrels would come in and eat.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a
I
great
said, that
story.
sounds.
I mean, honestly, you could write a great book about her.
Oh, well, I did later on. I
Yep,
did.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. All right, let's stick on the topic of StagHeart, though. What are the main characters in this series?
Well, Ryan McNeil is an Irish kid who his dad is the sheriff of a
Right?
town along the Antler River, and in the town are a lot of white people and a lot of natives that come from the nearby reservation, Stone Ridge.
Right?
And Ryan's mother was killed by a drunk driver one night, and it was a Native American, a Lakota, who did it. And ever since then, Ryan's had a hatred, not basically a racist hatred, just a hatred for the man who did it.
Right?
And his father has never forgiven him either. And so the two of them both, have a hatred going for this Tallman Thunderhawk. And Ryan ends up in the woods looking for a dog. His best friend, his dog Goof, a terrier, bull terrier, gets
I still
lost in
think
the
that's a
woods.
funny name for a dog. I
Yeah,
don't know why that's just a funny name for a dog.
well, he got sprayed by a skunk once, and they washed him out with tomato juice, and he started licking and lapping it up. So he swallowed 3 golf balls, and yeah, so he's called the Goof. But when Ryan goes in the woods to find him, circumstances end up that he ends up finding this Tallman Whitehawk involved in a drug deal and a shooting, and he ends up making a citizen's arrest on the guy and taking him into his dad, thinking he'll be proud of him. And the story kind of evolves from there.
Really? Who are the other characters in the book?
Dawn Redfeather, she is the female character that she's a wild child. She comes from Stone Ridge, and she's constantly stealing something.
Right.
Stole a school bus, stole horses. She gets accused of stealing these horses that were used in this drug deal down in the woods between a rogue FBI agent, DEA agent actually, and these 2 brothers, the Branch brothers, who are the bad guys in the book. And she gets accused of stealing these horses, which she didn't have anything to do with. But she runs into Ryan in the woods because she's on run because she's being accused of stealing these horses, and she's not. Tallman goes looking for her, and they all collide. There's a big collision that happens in the woods. There's a shootout. There's an encounter with the bear. They call him the Beast. And Mandrake is his name by the Lakota. They call him Mandrake because that's a poisonous weed. And
Nice name.
yeah. So,
Does that all happen in the first book?
Yeah, that happens in the first book, and I had to go deeper into the Wenatchee.
What separates the first book from the second book?
Probably more detail. There's drugs involved. There's drug shipments that are dropped off in the woods by couriers that fly planes over it. There's a taxidermy involved. There's drugs planted inside of taxidermed animals that are shipped to these colleges, and it's a detailed. It just gets more and more detailed. And I added a new character named Carly Raven, and she's a female investigator.
Right.
She works for Rebecca Bauer, who is named after my great grandmother, who's a lawyer for the Lakota, and she and Ryan's father Jess, they kind of hit it off, and I hint around at a romance. I don't go into detail, but if there's ever a 4th book, maybe I can do that.
Right. Now, what separates you told me what separates the first book from the second book, and how does this third book stand out among them?
Well, that's the wrap up. That's where everything all comes together, and the tensions are high, and the conclusion of everything has to come together there. And Ryan and Tall finally make a connection, and Ryan doesn't forgive the guy, but he understands him, and Dawn actually finds that Tallman's been set up all these years, that Ryan's mother was promoting a drug education program for the reservation, and some higher ups didn't want that to happen, and so they had her knocked off. And
you talk about the little bit your heroes of your book, right? The main characters, but I noticed you didn't talk about the villains of the book. So what are some of the villains in the book?
Oh, well, the bear is the main villain, but I try to have sympathy for him because he's a bad guy, but yet in the end of the book, he turns around and there's 2 bear fights in the book, and he defeats this other bear and basically saves Ryan and Dawn. But so
who are the people bad guys?
Oh, the Branch brothers, they're bad.
The Branch brothers, okay. Could you describe them, please?
Yeah, one's big and burly, and he's kind of a bear of a guy. The other guy's short hair and kind of a Marine-looking type with red hair, and they're bad. They're just they make a deal with this rogue DEA agent, and they knock him off basically. And
right.
Tallman walks into that. Dawn walks into that. Ryan later walks into it. And,
now, are they the primary antagonists for your heroes?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Branch brothers, right?
Yeah, but there's also a very sinister fellow who I would give it away if I told you who he was, but
yes,
he's been involved. There were murders that took place in StagHeart years ago. 3 boys were murdered with a deer antler, and they were found mutilated and killed, and that's been a no man's land ever since. StagHeart Woods, kids just don't go in there. But this guy comes out of the woodwork as a good guy at first, but then toward the end of the story, you find out he was involved in those murders, and he has a confrontation with Ryan and Dawn.
Right.
And I won't say no more of that because I'd probably spoil the story.
Now, did you end the StagHeart series on a cliffhanger? Or no? In other words, is there possibly another StagHeart?
There could be. I think I'd like it to be a standalone book because I concluded it very well. I mean, in the very end, Tallman finally forgives himself for killing Teresa McNeil, Ryan's mother, and I used the analogy of Crazy Horse, who Crazy Horse's first kill was a native woman from another tribe. I think she was Pawnee, and she was a female, and they really got on Crazy Horse about that in the beginning, and he overcame that, and then he went on to be this great war chief, who rode through hails of bullets and was never struck, and was a shirt wearer for his people, a counselor, and he did great things, even though he killed this woman back when he was about a 15-year-old kid.
Explain to the audience what a shirt wearer is for Indians.
A shirt wearer is a counselor, an American horse, afraid of his horses. There were 4 chosen in the beginning. The Big Bellies were the chiefs. They called them the Big Bellies, and they chose these counselors to try to keep peace among the people in the tribes. And Crazy Horse had 230 emblems attached to his shirt.
Oh my goodness!
And those signified his deeds and how great he was. His shirt was taken away, sadly, because he cheated on another man with his wife, and actually took her and abducted her, and so the chiefs decided that he was no longer a shirt wearer, and they took his shirt away, which is a sad thing, but
I guess so, man. I guess so. But anyway, look, if you'd like to read more of Tom's works, you go to the StagHeart 1, StagHeart 2, and StagHeart 3, and the publisher's Whitecap Publications. And you can get them, of course, on Amazon. But until our next interview, part 4 in the series, we can, by the way, what's your website, Tom?
www.tomfrye.org. And most of my books are on there. And now they're on Amazon as Audible books. So
good enough. All right, and Audible too. That's Audible, right?
Yep, audio. Yep, they're very great.
So next interview, we'll see you then, Tom. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Rick.